How are you? I hope we're having a good Monday. I've just got back from London. I'm getting back into the land of the living. It's bizarre. I've forgotten how to communicate. Anybody else forgotten how to communicate? I got on the train today and the train manager spoke to me and I was like, I don't know how to speak. I don't know how to have an interaction with somebody anymore. I've just done it to a screen for quite a long time. I just need a monologue. When somebody else talks, it's just impossible. I think I can't be the only one who's going through that situation. Trying to smile at people like, don't speak to me, I have no words anymore. And then I get sent something by the government's website where apparently we're going to be augmenting humans with defence mechanisms in AI, because that makes sense. Have we not learnt from Terminator? Is it just me who thinks that everything's been in a film and now we're getting it back? Don't augment humans with AI to make defence creatures, because we all know that defence creatures are there because of attack creatures, or you don't need a defence creature. Is it just me? It's like when they say that, an assault rifle is an assault rifle because you assault somebody with it. It's more of an assault augmentation, isn't it? I mean, it's just semantics, I appreciate it. But I'm not wrong, am I? You don't create a defence AI human augmented robot person to defend unless there's another one that might be attacking. Is it just me? Personally, I'd volunteer because I'd rather be the one who had all of the upgrades before something goes horribly wrong and all of a sudden the person's just melting into silver and then just coming back again as different human beings. I've seen it. I know what's happened. All we need now is a time machine. We can go back, get muscled up and sort this mess out. I'm definitely going back to 1998. That's all I'm saying. Loads of questions in tonight. I'll try and get through as many as I can. I'll try to involve the ones that synergize. So if you don't hear your exact response, it's just because I've screwed them together. Nice to see you all. The first one I'm going to do is a bit of a mixed up one. I only saw it come in on Twitter a few minutes ago, so I haven't read it out in the way that it was written, but just go with me on this. And it's about your biological dad. You got in touch with him on a social network. He's been absent from your life. It's quite anxiety provoking and you don't know how to kind of make that connection. And also you went through the severe grief of losing your partner to a brain hemorrhage 7 years ago. And that's obviously a big deal as well. And there's kind of feelings of guilt there and all the things that are in between. Two big separate issues. You've also got BPD and depression and anxiety. So we've got mental health issues and also let's look at the situational issues. Dad, let's go with him first. Well, it's great that you found him on a social network. It's great because if you're in a space where you want to make a connection, and if there's one thing the shit show of the past year has shown us, it's that we do not have that much time always, do we, with the people that we love. I'm not talking about people dying of COVID. I'm not talking about people dying of other things. I'm saying that if there's one thing that we've lost, it's time. So not being with people that we care about, not spending time with people that we love, being denied the access to our God-given human rights, they're things that we feel a grief process over, but it's brought into sharp focus the people that matter. And yes, you've had an absent father, and it's really important to remember that when you go into a new relationship with an absentee parent and you haven't been able to forge and form that as a child, you are going to have obstacles. You're going to have bumps in the road. Firstly, you're going to have a little bit of pent up frustration and resentment, and that's okay. You got let down. It's totally acceptable to hold that and to feel they should have done a better job. They should have. But you can't go on to have a good relationship with that person if you aren't willing to kind of have that conversation and then let it go. It's a bit like when somebody has an affair in a relationship. There's no point trying to work on it unless the person is going to forgive and let it go. Otherwise, it just bubbles under the surface, blows up when you're at a party, having a few drinks, and so on and so forth. So acknowledge, but don't hold on. Secondly, remember that parents are still human. They are fallible. They make awful mistakes, and sometimes they're regretful of those. And if they are regretful of those and they want to connect with you and they're willing to take responsibility and accountability for that, I think that's fair enough. Most importantly, don't have expectations of them being the nurturing parent that you wished for. That's not to say for 1 minute it will not occur. Things do happen like that. People connect all the time with absentee friends, relatives, all of those things happen. But if you have expectations that exceed the reality of what you're going to get, that can mean that you don't take the blessings of it. So it's more about saying, I've connected with this person. I know that I want to have some interaction with them. I don't know what that's going to feel like or expand to, but I'm willing to take that risk because I want that relationship. And from that point, it's at two adults working it out. Because remember, you're an adult and he's an adult. You're not a child anymore. You don't want to be in child state. We want to do adult state. And even with BPD, I know that can make things feel a little bit more sharp and a little bit more volume to the emotions. But that doesn't mean that you can't bring it down to adult. You can both have those grown conversations. And hopefully with work and communication, you will build a relationship. And that's what you have to ask yourself at the end of the day. Do I want a relationship with a significant person in my life or not? And if it's, yeah, I do. I want to know where I came from. I want to know who he belongs to. I want to figure out what kind of a situation we can connect over. That's going to be a relationship. And it's going to be potentially better than not having one. Equally, that doesn't mean it's going to be simple. But I would say where anxiety and depression are concerned, you're going to feel anxious about reconnecting and meeting him because you're going to have all these ideas of what it should be like and fears of what it may not be like. Neutralize them. Just neutralize them. Be more present. Don't overthink it. You'll know how you feel when you experience the relationship. You'll know whether you want to continue it. You'll know whether it's going to be something you can manage or whether you're not willing to do that. That's something that you'll be able to manifest when you're in the situation that you're given to. So try to avoid that anxiety and depression where it's concerned. Neutralize it. It is just you doing a grown-up thing, reaching out, connecting, and hopefully taking it forward to something that might be more positive. Then you said about your partner, look, when we have guilt and loss around somebody that we loved, one of the reasons that we've got to see that it exists is because we're trying to control the uncontrollable. It happens a lot. It's what I do with my own father. I can go through what I could have done, what I should have done, what would have been better, which would have created a different outcome. It's a futile process and it's my brain trying to make the situation more palatable to me. So if I could go back and do this, this and this wouldn't happen, right? It's futile because I can't change it. Secondly, all you need to know as a loving partner is you would have given your life to save the person that you loved. That's what we all feel like. And you know that in your heart. And that's the only thing that you need to know. You need to know that if you had had the chance, the choice, the option, you would have done anything to change the outcome. That's your love. That's the only thing that we can connect with in those situations. The ifs, the buts, the whys, the wherefores, it's all irrelevant. What you know is if you could have done anything to change the outcome, you would have done that. And that's enough. And so whilst I can't heal the grief, even at 7 years, you're still going to the probably extreme level of still managing that grief. 7 years is actually what people believe it takes before you can start to really feel that that bubble wrap has occurred. And if you've gone through traumatic grief, you can extend that. So you're still in that experience. And it's subjective. It can take many, many, many years. But it's more about bringing it back to, actually, I know I loved him. I know he loved me. I would have done anything to heal him. I didn't have that option. And I carry that love with me. But it's all right to actually say to yourself, I'm also allowed to be happy again. I'm also allowed to fall in love again. I'm not betraying somebody because I want to have a relationship with another human being. We often get stuck on that stuff, particularly if it's been a traumatic death. We imagine that we failed or let somebody down. And the truth is, when you really think about love, you think about what's best for the person that you love. So your partner would be sitting there going, I want you to be happy. I want you to find love. I don't want you to use my death as a way to beat yourself up. I don't want to be the stick that hits you. I want to be the hand that soothes you. I want to be the person who hands you to somebody else so that you feel safe and loved and connected. And I think that's really important to connect with. That sense of what would he have wanted for you? And I imagine it would be a beautiful love story with somebody else, or at least peace in your own life. And I think that when you allow yourself to see that you don't need to control that anymore, you don't need to say, well, I need to be grief-stricken and guilty. You can be really in the experience of grief, but let the guilt go. The guilt's just negative. It's a wasted emotion in these situations. It can't change anything, and you don't deserve it. Like I said, The guilt is something that you can shelve. You know, the grief is something that you need to process. But try to see it from his perspective, because I guarantee that the last thing that he'd want is for you to feel that you had failed. It's the last thing my dad would have wanted for me, you know, and you have to manifest that change. You have to kind of be like, okay, even though I don't feel it, sometimes I've got to say it to myself, I've got to hear it, I've got to force myself to hear it. And if you do that more and more, I think it will help to neutralise again that position that you've got where you feel guilty. Any advice to help with bereavement? Wow, I was kind of just saying stuff there that was linked to bereavement. Everybody experiences bereavement differently. I'm going to say that because I think that it's really easy to stereotype and be dead. This is how it is. And I think that before I lost my dad, I was very much like that. And I nursed my best friend with cancer and I adored her and she was my best friend of many, many years. And I thought I knew grief because I'd been there and I'd loved her and I'd let her go. And then another friend, a really good friend of mine, I spent 2 weeks with him, just stroking him whilst he was dying. And I was in that situation where I was like, you know, I can do this grief thing. It's really bad. It's really painful, but I can do it. I can manage it. I can take the beauty from the experience. You know, like I would never have not wanted Pam in my life. I would never have not wanted to be with Tom when he died. It was those feelings of like, this is a gift. And then my dad died and I was like, this is unbearable. I cannot manage. And from that, I've understood that bereavement is dependent, firstly, obviously, on the relationship, but secondly, on the experience of the death. So even a death of cancer can be a good death in the fact that you have time to process. I don't mean that you have time to process the loss. I mean, you have time to process the experience with the person that you're losing, almost a cradling of and a letting go in great pain, but a reasonable understanding that this is happening and a small period of time to connect with the fact that this is going to be a reality, albeit it still slaps you in the face. If you've had a traumatic death or a sudden death, your brain just cannot compute it. And even if you've had a death that you're expecting and anticipating, often the moment from life to death, which is like unbelievably instantaneous. I mean, we shouldn't fear death. It's just like an instant. Really, it's there and then it's gone. And as I believe, consciousness continues. But what you suddenly realise is, wow, this is a permanent state. And even if you felt prepared, the wholeness of that person, the massive person-shaped hole in your life is a really big deal. And even if you think you're prepared, often that's just your brain cheating you into believing it. And then when it happens, it's suddenly a whole new world of pain. So the first thing I'd say with grief, and again, this is subjective, how did it work for me? So the first thing I'd say is to know that when you lose somebody really close to you, you often question your own desire to be here, and that's okay. I don't think we have that conversation very often. Many of us go through that period of thinking, this is too painful, I don't want to do this anymore. And that's not selfish, and it's not bad, and it's not something you should be afraid of or guilty for. It's just real life. When you feel in agony and pain, the natural desire is escape. It's just the way that we are. Same as if you dislocate your shoulder and then you're taken to hospital, all you want is them to inject you with pethidine or morphine. You just want to escape it because it's too painful. And you want it anaesthetised. And that's what we want to do. That's why a lot of us might drink heavily or take recreational drugs or do things that are bad for us. It's not because we're actively seeking to harm ourselves, it's that we're trying to medicate the pain with something. So I think accept that it's at times intolerable. Secondly, don't ever feel that you cannot talk about them constantly. I think that bringing the person that you love and lost into the room is so essential. And it's not even that people know how to relate to that. Often I will tell people about my dad so that they get better at knowing how to speak to other people about bereavement. I use my experience to teach them that they're going to have to figure ways forward of how to actually experience grief with another human being. It's not to punish them, it's just that I think we should all do that. We should all do more talking about death. So don't be afraid to bring them into the room. Equally, if you just don't want to talk about it, that's absolutely as pertinent for you. I think things like ritual are really powerful. So memory boxes, sometimes it's really painful. I'm not at a point where I can do that yet, and it's nearly 2 years. I can't do it. He's still alive for me. And that's another thing I'd say. it takes a long time, in my experience now, to even start processing the fact that the person that you love isn't here. So go easy on yourself with that. We used to think and say, and I was trained in this, that this is how it goes: shock, denial, disbelief, numbness, bargaining, anger, then acceptance, then resolution. It's just bollocks, really. It's miles more complex than that. But I think that there are moments where you're just like numb and you don't believe it's happening, and then you just want to pray that it can change, you can take back time, you can turn the world around. They're all normal. And then anger, because why has it happened to you? And why do you have to get left with these feelings? And all the things that are in between that is completely normal. Some people need grief counselling. Don't feel like you're losing or failing, because you do. A lot of people need that. Coming to terms with the most important people in your life not being present is incredibly difficult. And it's something that I think most of us spend our lives processing. I read a thing that people in their late 60s tend to be the happiest, and I thought to myself, I wonder whether that is because most of them have lost the people and started to acknowledge that their life is temporary, and that the people that they have lost, they've had enough time and space to process, so that they are almost the hierarchy. They'll be the ones who are lost next, and it makes the last years, 10, 15, 20 years feel a lot more enjoyable, because you're almost like, actually, I've done my time where grief is concerned. I still feel it, but I connect the fact that I'm now the one who'll be losing, people will be losing me to them. So I think that that makes sense as well. So I just think really go easy with yourself, and don't believe that there is any way straightforward through grief. You can't avoid it, can't hide from it. It'll come and bite you on the bum. I went to work 6 days after my dad died. It was really early, but it was the only way I could compartmentalise survival with grief. So whatever works for you. Like I said, counselling is really good. Any kind of grief work. Cruise is a bereavement agency as well. They probably still do free stuff. And just remember, as I always say, it's something that I tell everybody, and it's something I've said 100 times on here, and I will say another 1,000 times on here. Just remember that grief is love in disguise. It really is. It's the thread that connects you. Everybody has a different belief system. I appreciate that not everybody believes what I believe. I fully believe that consciousness continues. I believe this is a snippet of a journey. I believe that we're eternal. I believe that the thread that connects me with my father is here somewhere around my umbilical cord to him. And one day I'll use that to pull myself back to him. I really believe that. Everyone has a different belief system. Yours is welcome here. Atheists are welcome here as well. Hi Emma, I don't know if you can help. I'm trying to conceive, but struggling. It started to cause arguments in my relationship with my boyfriend, and I'm starting to blame myself that I can't get pregnant. I've suffered a few miscarriages in the past. Any advice? My boyfriend thinks we should have sex every day. I bet he does. I mean, let's separate that. He's a man. No disrespect, man. I know that many men watching will be like, I don't demand sex every single day. I'm just saying, quite a few men would like sex every day. In my experience of life, my husband is over there putting his hand up right now in a sarcastic, ironic way. A lot of men have an insatiable sex appetite for a period of time, quite a long time. And a lot of women do too. But I think that when it comes down to men, when we look at research, a lot of men feel the need for sex because that makes them feel very wanted and very active in the relationship. So it's like a very clear physical expression of connection. But particularly if you've not got the same libido, it can be exhausting, can't it? And you find that you don't necessarily have the same libido, and that's completely all right. That's the communication issue. Should you have sex every day when you're trying to get pregnant? Well, I mean, the jury's out. If I look at literature on it, because I have to have fertility treatment to get pregnant, so bloody hell, I've read all of them, and everybody says something different, but it used to be every other day. That's what we were told. Everybody has a different idea of what that is, but every other day was what we were told. Also, you shouldn't make sex into a thing about getting pregnant. That's just stressful. Sex should be adult play. Getting pregnant should be the benefit of what happens at some point. It also is worth saying that people can take often up to a couple of years to get pregnant. You have had miscarriages. You are not infertile. You are unlucky. You are unlucky. 1 in 3 women will miscarry, and they're the reported ones. So probably a lot more women have miscarriages. In fact, many will have chemical pregnancies where they get pregnant and then they lose, and many of them don't even know it's happened. You're not abnormal, and the fact that you can get pregnant is a really good sign. However, it is very much worth if you have miscarried a few times, and really if you've miscarried more than 2 times, they should be testing you anyway, because the rule is on 3, you get tested. Because there can be things like, let's say you are rhesus negative, so you're B negative. If you are B negative, after the first miscarriage, you are going to need an injection to be able to carry your baby. And if you haven't had that investigated, it will be a recurrent miscarriage issue. You can't carry after the first pregnancy with rhesus negative, so get that looked at. Secondly, it can be a hormonal issue, so you need a day 21 test. A day 21 test is 21 days after your period. You have a test, it tests the progesterone and other hormones in your system to check whether you're ovulating. Not everybody ovulates every month, and they can then prescribe you Clomid. Clomid basically helps you to ovulate, and that often is really helpful, particularly in younger women under 35. However, if there are more complex issues, then that needs to be investigated. But most of the time, particularly with Clomid, you'll find that you will get pregnant. Secondly, reduce the stress. Acupuncture has been shown. NICE guideline recommends acupuncture for pregnancy, so it's actually NICE guideline approved. See, that Eastern stuff that they all try throwing out like Big Pharma do. Big pharmacies are like, no, none of that stuff. Well, it's NICE guideline approved because it works. It works, big pharmaceutical company. It works. So do one with you. It doesn't. NICE guideline approved, NHS. Try some of that. That'll help with relaxation. But the most important thing is when you are desperate to get pregnant, all you think about is pregnancy, and that removes the fun, firstly from your relationship, and secondly what your relationship is about, which is about 2 people. Yes, you want to grow it, but things will be a lot easier, even if you have to go down the fertility route. I've got 2 gorgeous boys, and I couldn't have them without help. There are always ways to get where you need to go, but you have got pregnant, and you have miscarried, and that's sad, but it means that you can conceive. But get those tests done. That's what I do. I'm certainly not a fertility expert. Dr. Larissa Corder on Instagram is a friend of mine, Dr. Larissa Corder. She's great to ask questions on, so have a look at that as well. And like I said, go and get those tests done. Emma, a friend told me they were abused as a child yesterday. I think I reacted well and offered support, but I'm not a professional. Can you recommend how I steer my friend to get help, please? You did it right. You're not there to be some kind of shaman. The point is, that person came to you, confided in you, you responded appropriately, you were caring, compassionate, accepting, you believed them. That's the best reaction you could ever give. Sometimes when people are abused and they tell people, people don't believe them, react badly, or ignore what they've said and just kind of move on. The fact that you are relating this issue to me, and the fact that you related your understanding to that person, is an incredible gift. It's something that stays with you when you're an abuse survivor. Those first scenarios where you invest in another human being, they're big moments because it can go horribly wrong and make you feel worse about the situation. And you owned that and you allowed your friend to be open with you, and you clearly didn't reject them in any way. And that person's going to remember that for a very, very long time. So the healing begins when people take it seriously and hear that situation. And the idea that we always need professional support is a myth. It really is. So don't feel that you have to like push them down the therapy route. However, having said that, I'd say there are different areas to explore. So the first one is, are they telling you about this abuse because they're actually ready to go to the police? Now, if that's the case, it would be really helpful for you to accompany them and to help them make those moves. Or it might be that they're thinking about that and they want that support. So it could be a bit strategic with it, which is, I'm so glad that you've told me about this abuse, and I want you to know that whatever you need, whatever you want, at your pace, I'm with you. But now you've talked about it with me, I want you to know that if you do want to take this further, if that's something that you need, I'm going to absolutely be by your side. I don't know how that's going to feel. I don't want you to feel like I'm going to push you. I'm completely okay if you don't want to do anything with it, but don't feel like you're alone on this journey. Because sometimes we start talking about it before we start making motions to change our situation by speaking to the police. So that could be one level. The second one is that they are starting to really expose this grief that they've been through dealing with the abuse. If that's the case, then certainly say to her, maybe we should go to the doctors, get you referred for counselling. That's going to take time, but it's worth having it. There's also an abuse survivors network, so you can look that up. And with the Abuse Survivors Network, there'll be support groups and opportunities for people to connect with other like-minded spirits who've been through similar situations, and that can be really, really helpful and enlightening for people. So they're things that you can do. But the main thing is, just be ready with the odd glass of wine and chocolate cake and cups of tea, and be like, I'm always going to be a listening ear for you. Because sometimes when somebody starts to talk about it and they actually break that seal, they just want to talk about it a lot, and that can be really cathartic. Just be that listening ear, and don't take on too much. You're not there to solve it. You're not there to heal any of that. That's for the individual to do, but you can be part of the healing process by enabling that sounding board. But like I said, don't get dragged down by it as well, because it can be really dark to listen to those situations. So have some boundaries. That's what I do as well. Aww. My 9-year-old son is embarrassed by me because I'm overweight. His friends are commenting and he's having a hard time. I have binge eating disorder, which I'm working through currently, but I just want to cry and give up on working on myself as it's taking too long and nothing seems to change. I just want my son to be proud of me when I'm standing at the gates collecting him from school. Thank you, Emma. I just want to give you the biggest hug. I really do. That's really hard, and I'm not going to deny it's really hard. I can't imagine what it's like for a mum to feel that way. So first of all, you're trying to manage your eating disorder, okay? So it's not easy. You've not chosen binge eating disorder to be like, yay, this is the best way to cope in the world. This is your strategy to medicate your pain. It's a shitty one compared to what you want to achieve, but don't be angry with yourself for trying to find a solution to pain that you're carrying. And when you think about binge eating disorder, and to people who are listening, that's different to something like bulimia. So binge eating disorder is characterised usually by eating ordinary meals and then really abusing the self by overeating things that you know is really not going to be good for you and gaining weight. And I always say it's like wearing your problems on your body. A bit like when somebody's anorexic, it's like screaming sickness, isn't it? It's like I'm wearing my problems on my body or my lack of body. And it's the same for binge eating disorder. But one is obviously characterised as being very skinny. The other one is characterised as sometimes being a normal weight or overweight or very overweight. But it's not a choice you're making because you're lazy or greedy or a failure. You're doing it because you're struggling and heaping loads of negativity on yourself because you don't know how to just click and get it back to how you should be, ideally. That's not going to help you. So your son's 9, and I appreciate that there is nothing more challenging than the digs that other kids make towards other children. I think that's really painful for your son, but also much more painful for you to some degree, because you feel responsible. But you have to take a step back from this. First of all, like I said, heaping all of that guilt and negativity on yourself to a point where actually it's going to be completely counterproductive. It's going to sabotage the work that you're doing, and it's going to make you feel worse about yourself. That's almost like giving yourself license to fail, isn't it? It's like, well, there's no point. This is all going wrong. He's getting bullied because of me. I may as well just give up because I'm a terrible person. You know, that self-sabotage is the voice that we need to close down, because that's the little nasty voice of binge eating disorder. That's like, go on, you're a failure anyway, have it. That's the voice. That's the excuse that we're looking for, isn't it? Okay, how do I beat myself up more? Well, I'll just do this. So we have to kind of accept that that voice is there. It's a bit like when I talk to people about OCD. That voice of binge eating disorder, it's there and it's telling you what to do, and you have a choice, which is to hear it and to be like, I'm just going to work my plan. I'm just going to go through my day having my healthy meals and listening to that angry voice that's telling me to just throw in the towel, and I'm just going to stick to my plan. And it might be boring and it might be mundane, but it's the right thing for me and my health and wellness. It's almost like doing that, exposing yourself to food, eating it, enjoying it, allowing yourself to make peace with that mindfully. Turn off computers, turn off phone, turn off television, sort yourself out 3 good meals a day that you enjoy, quietly eat them, make sure that you give yourself a sense of peace. Enjoy every taste, every crunch, every texture, and just allow yourself to be in that moment with it, and learn to stop when you get contentment. So not fullness, we never go for fullness. We always want to just feel mildly content around our solar plexus. That's where we stop. And that teaching ourselves to stop is, first of all, making space for the pain, which can be really difficult. When you are trying to stuff down your feelings, that's what you're doing. You're overeating and you're stuffing down those unmanageable feelings because you're struggling. But it needs space. It needs physical space and it needs emotional space. And when you allow yourself to eat a meal and then be at peace and be like, what are these feelings that are telling me to go and eat all of that? It's like, right, we stop. We don't react to that. We listen. We process. We're like, this is what it is. It could be unresolved trauma. It could be loneliness. It could be grief. It could be pain from the past that you haven't processed yet. It could be a whole heap of things. But until you listen to it, it's just going to keep shouting. So you just need to bring it back to that position of like, I'm going to start listening. Secondly, with your child, it's really tough because your son will love you more than anything and anyone in the world. And the fact that he's reacting to these children, that's on those kids. That's those kids' problems. And arguably, I would speak to school. I would have a conversation. You might be embarrassed about that. Don't be. You're not a failure. Your size isn't who you are. You're a whole heap of lovely people, feelings, and all the things that make you the human being that you are. Just know that it's okay to have that conversation with school. Get in touch and say, look, this is happening. And maybe get those boys spoken to or those girls spoken to about how to be nicer. Because those children need to learn some compassionate lessons here. Because human beings come in all shapes and sizes and always will. And if they're that judgy at 9 years old, they have a big problem. And I think that having that conversation with the school will take it one layer away from you. Secondly, you're going to have to learn to hold your head high. Seriously. There are people who are morbidly obese on BBW, big beautiful women. They are in lingerie and they are the biggest sized women you could ever see, and they love themselves. So your size is not the issue, your state of mind is the issue. If you hold your head high, if you're proud, if you wear clothes that make you feel good, if you stand there smiling, that's all you've got to do. Your son will feed off your feelings. He'll feed off it. We all do. If you're trying to play small to make it so that other people can manage the way you look, then you're not doing yourself any justice. Yes, you're not a size you're happy with, but you don't need to exert that into the world. You will be so many better things than you see yourself as. So think about the way that you operate around your son, the pride that you have for yourself, the self-care that you give yourself, the honesty. Tell your son, I am overweight, I'm working on it. Lots of people are overweight, but you know what? Overweight is much nicer than unkind. Overweight, well, we can deal with that. Nasty, that says something about a character. Bring it back to the child state. Let him know, okay, yeah, mum is overweight and I'm going to get myself into a situation where I'm healthier and you can help me. Maybe we can go for walks. Maybe you can get me motivated, but I am kind. And you ask yourself this, do you want a nasty, bullying parent like these children are basically being in childhood, or do you want a kind, loving, compassionate mum? And the truth is he's going to choose that. But be open with him about this. Your struggle is okay. There are lots of people struggling that way. And obviously I've got my app Appy that you can look at, that's free. It's got loads of exercise programs and lots of plans, but also WW have got a great app. Maybe you could join them. They've got this 360. There are lots of things that you can do, but don't feel alone. And also don't be ashamed. Everyone has a struggle. Yours is binge eating disorder. I hope you're getting some help with that. You need some nurture, some care, some counselling ideally. If you're not, that's okay. Get on a waiting list. But in the meantime, it's about working your plan. It's about being really hard on yourself. It's about saying to yourself, right, this is what I need to do every day. I'm going to plan my meals. I'm going to prep my meals. It's portions, planning and picking. Portions, planning and picking every time. What you're eating, what the portion size is, and what kind of plan you've got around that. That's how you start creating the goals that can make a massive difference. And also stop medicating yourself with food. It's not going to give you the answers. Okay? You need to process that deeper emotion. And it's the same for all of us. If I drink too much alcohol, whilst I'm not a big drinker, I know that when I'm doing it, it's because there's something deeper going on. I have to stop and pull myself back and be like, okay, if I'm going to drink more than a few times a week, there's something going on. I need to pull that back. And I need to think, okay, this is uncomfortable. What am I dealing with? And unequivocally, it will be something like anxiety, fear of failure, dealing with insecurity. And then it's like, okay, right, I know how to meet those, but I need to hear them before I do it. So I do that. And I think all of us have got a little bit of that within us. I think every single one of us has. I do really envy people who just seemingly always are really happy, but I think 90% of us don't have that level of just always being okay. I'm sure that if you're very, very fortunate and don't have any money worries and are healthy and all your family is really happy and healthy, you probably have a better shot at it. But for the average human, we all go through periods where it's a real struggle and we all medicate badly to some degree, but it's picking it up before it becomes more of a problem. And you're at a point where you've recognised what's wrong and you can manage it. But I don't want you to feel this failure. You are not shameful, and I wanted to give you a hug, and I still want to give you a hug. Stop judging yourself. Stop judging yourself that way. There are many, many people who are very big, and my God, they would go on a catwalk and absolutely strut their stuff. It's a state of mind. Your self-perception is broken. Heal it. You're good enough in this moment, and your son will understand that if you start owning it. And like I said, speak to the school about those little brats, because they probably need to have a good injection of kindness. And it's really important that they learn that ASAP, because little bullies grow into big bullies. I just wanted to ask, if you have a therapist through the NHS and your therapy ends and your therapist moves to a different job in the NHS, not doing therapy, but actually does private therapy, she's Manchester based, which is where I am too. I know therapy is expensive, but I don't want to have a different therapist and learn to trust someone again. Do you know it's allowed to see them privately if you've seen an NHS patient? I've had therapy for 18 months on NHS Weekly, and it was only towards the end of therapy I started to open up and trust her. I feel like I couldn't do that again with someone else. Thanks, Emma. I hope you're okay. So it's going to be down to the therapist more than anything. They've gone into private practice. You've had 18 months of therapy with them. You're not taking away from the NHS. The NHS won't be like, that's not allowed. There's a contract here. You're not allowed to take our clients. The NHS are like, go, because they're so busy, right? So you not being a burden to them, you're not a burden, but that's the way it is, isn't it? You know, you're one of those numbers. If you're going to go and pay somebody, they're not going to have an issue. What you might find is that your therapist has a different idea about this, particularly if you work towards an exit. But if you can maybe have a conversation with that therapist and say, I feel like I was just starting to get to the good stuff, they may be willing to contract you for a series of sessions to do that. So first thing I'd do is call the therapist and have that conversation. Just be like, hi, I was really getting to the important stuff. I don't really want to end my therapy yet. Is it possible for me to contract to a certain number of sessions with you? Is that going to be acceptable? And from there, you'll know whether it's a yes or a no. The other thing to remind yourself of, though, is that if they've gone into private practice, it could be because they've got a specialist area that they're looking at working with. And that's not a rejection if it's a no to you. And you should never be afraid to try a new therapist, particularly if you've had 18 months of therapy, because you're at a point where you've got through a lot of the processes to connect with these deeper feelings. And you can say, okay, well, I'm only going to be able to do it with this person, but that's like a limitation and a boundary that you're creating that doesn't need to be there. Like, you can create that and then say, well, that's why I'm not going to talk about this deep stuff, because that person isn't the person that I was working with. Or you can say, actually, I've done this work and now I'm going to take it to another level. So either way, it's still worth carrying on the therapy. And yes, I get it. You might meet somebody and be like, oh, it's going to take a bit of time to get into a fit. But actually, if you talk to people and get in touch with a number of therapists, you'll find somebody that you've got rapport with. And then when you've got rapport, it's amazing how quickly the sessions can move on. It really is. No matter how challenging things are, if you get somebody who's just like, yeah, that person I could go and have a coffee with, There's just something about the relationship. And suddenly you're like, do you know what? I'm just going to say this stuff. Don't underestimate the 18 months of work that you've done. It's there, it's good, it's positive, but do have that conversation. But don't feel let down if they say no. It won't be a you thing, it will be a practice thing, what they're doing. Hi, I'm not sure if you can help, but thought it was worth a shot. I found out last week that I was pregnant and it's impacted on my mental health for a couple of reasons. I struggle with OCD rituals ever since I found out I've had compulsions to continue to take pregnancy tests, which started off maybe 1 to 2 a day, but it's up since then, and today I've taken 7. I don't know what purpose it's trying to serve, but I spent so much money on them. I used to have a health anxiety, so I'm health anxiety, so I'm starting to become more conscious, and this worry that if I don't do everything 100% right, something bad will happen and I will end up miscarrying. I've also haven't told my parents. I'm an adult, so more entitled to keep it to myself, especially as so early. The downside is I feel so alone with it. My mum is an over worrier, and I think if I said anything, although she can't physically make a decision for me, she'd tell me it's not the right time, as I've recently started to get my life together. I have had a period using Tinder to make me feel wanted and less alone. Hello, pregnancy. She said that, by the way. It's not me going sarcastically, hello, pregnancy. I didn't massively enjoy the physical side for so long. I felt I should be grateful for sex and it means that someone likes me. But afterwards, I don't hear anything from them, which then started the cycle of feeling lonely. Then it all starts again. I've put a stop to this now as it was only making me feel worse, but now I'm worried about this pregnancy and the fear of people judging me. Number one, it's 2021. People are not going to judge you for being a single mum. Women choose to be single mums. They'll queue it up at the IVF clinics. Do not believe there is a stigma. There isn't. Ask yourself this. How often have you really cared whether somebody's pregnant by a one-night stand? You just don't. It's not 1980. It's not 1960. It's perfectly all right to have a baby. In fact, if you're at a point where you've taken those negative experiences on Tinder and made it into a positive experience because you're happy that you're pregnant, nice one. That's great. You know, you've recognised that you were being used as far as you're concerned and you didn't get the gratification that you needed and you didn't get the value that you needed and it didn't work for you, and you've kind of put that to one side, and the consequence of that is you're now pregnant, but actually it sounds to me like that feels like a bit of a gift. However, a few things are going on. First off, hormones are the devil. Hormones are the devil. I remember getting pregnant on Clomid, my first child, and I remember my then husband, he's buried under the patio. No, he's not really. My then husband walking in, and I was lay on the floor in the kitchen, and I had a wood floor. So it wasn't even like a nice floor. I was lay on the floor and I was just sobbing. And I think that went on for about 4 days. And it was only when the doctor said, because I basically don't really have progesterone and estrogen in my body without help, I was basically turning into what women feel like when they're going through this experience. And it was completely new to me. I don't really have those hormonal fluxes. It's insane. Now, we also know that when you are in a typical experience mentally, that can happen. So it doesn't matter whether you've had the most neutral of experiences and you're zen as ever. The minute you get pregnant, it's like having a boxing match with like your ovaries. Honestly, it's like everything turns on its head. Everything. And that's not including the exhaustion and sometimes the sickness. Jesus, it's brilliant, but bloody hard work. So we know that that's just for a typical pregnancy. You have OCD. And you have OCD with ritual experience, right? And you also have some intrusive thoughts there. That's what the take the test, take the test, take the test. So you know that those kind of ruminations are coming. We also know that hormones and OCD are things that get exacerbated from each other. So the hormones exacerbate the OCD behaviour. So OCD UK is a brilliant resource. Go on there, have a read. Channel Mum is a good resource as well because they've got loads of people talking on their SOS about these kind of things. But the thing for you to do is, 1, ERP, exposure response therapy. If you can't afford it, it's okay. I'll sum it up really quickly and I'll save you some money basically doing it. Exposure response therapy is, I have to deal with my ruminations and my ritualistic belief systems and thoughts and just not do them. I know that might seem like an obvious thing to say. It's the only way through it, really. Cognitive behavioural therapy can be effective, but I think ERP is very effective. So how do you do that? Well, all of those pregnancy tests, you can go and buy them and you can do them, but all you're doing is reinforcing the behaviour. So instead, you have to deal with the feeling which is a compulsion. Oh my God, I've got to go and check whether I'm pregnant. Oh my God, I've got to go and check whether I'm pregnant. That's the compulsion. You have to completely allow it to be present without reacting to it. And the more that you let it be present without reacting to it, the more the brain minimizes the compulsion. This is how to make this work better for yourself. This is how to get through the pregnancy. So you've got to try to minimize the compulsion by listening to it, accepting it's there, and ignoring it, and getting about your daily business. A lot of people will find it easier if they do things like schedules, but with ritualistic behavior, you have to be clear that you're not going to become archetypal in your schedule to the point where you're not actually living. You know, it can't be like every 10 minutes I'm going to do this, and this. But if you can do a loose schedule that you know what you're doing, you know where you're going, you put your exercise in there, you put your work in there, and so on and so forth, it will help. Also, there are some apps now that you can get that are really helpful. So look at the OCD apps. I don't actually know the exact ones, but I know I was looking at one the other day, and it's a clinically managed one where psychotherapists and psychologists have created it. So look at those. And that's all about helping you to kind of make sure that you're in check with what's happening in your life, as well as accepting these feelings that are coming from the OCD. Then, your mum. You've not done anything wrong. You're pregnant, you're an adult, do what you want. But it'd be really nice to get some support. And it's the way that you tell somebody. So if you say to your mum, I've got some great news, I'm pregnant, she's not going to be like, this is a terrible idea. If you go in there all, oh my God, I've got some news, that will be the way that the experience is tempered. It will be like, oh God, this isn't a good thing. If she's kind of anxious, just reduce her anxiety by being more open about your happiness and let her know how she can support you. Turn her anxiety into something productive and positive. Say, Mum, I'm pregnant. I'm really happy I'm pregnant, but I have these other issues that would be really helpful to get some support with. And give her a role and responsibility. An anxious mum likes the role and responsibility. It's like, I can see it, I can feel it, I know what she needs. Do that. You need support. I appreciate that you probably want to get to 12 weeks. I appreciate that. But you might need some support before that. And if you can't get support off your mum, get some support off one of your friends. You've not done anything wrong. And if you're happy about the pregnancy, this is something to celebrate. Having babies is the best thing in the universe, in my opinion. It's complete bias. It's not at all objective. It's completely subjective and unprofessional of me to throw it in. But nonetheless, I will, because at the end of the day, if you're in a good place about it, this is something to celebrate. But ERP, exposure response. Expose yourself to the reality of your life. Schedule what your day is going to be like. Hear the ruminations. Hear the intrusions. Hear the go and take a pregnancy test and ignore it. And I know that might feel, oh my God, how will I do that? Because this is really telling me what I've got to do. Ignore it. Just let it be there. The more you ignore it, the better it will be. It would be worth as well having a chat with your GP, because even though you're pregnant, there are still things that they can do, and there are certain medications that they can look at that can help reduce those kind of things. That's the extreme, but I think it's good to be managed. Remember, you're going to go through the process of getting a midwife and a health visitor and all those things, and it's ACE, because they just comfort you. Even during this bizarre whatever it is in the last 12, 13 months, you'll still get that kind of wraparound care. They're really lovely, the midwives and the health visitors. So it'll be really nice to kind of just tell them the truth about it. You're doing nothing wrong, and just get that wraparound care. Hi Emma, I love seeing you on this morning. Oh, thank you very much. It's nice to be back in the studio. Also, I look better on a Monday now because they paint my head. I just walk in there and just paint my head. Sometimes I don't even have my face anymore. I have a better face. Well, till I wipe it off. I hope you're well. Looking fabulous. Thank you. Again, nothing to do with me. Everything to do with the makeup artist. I have a question. Me and my boyfriend have been together for a year now, and I'm in the process of buying a house. Should have moved in a few weeks. Oh, we should be moving in a few weeks. Exciting. However, I've always made it clear I can't wait to start a family from day one. I'm 30 now, no kids yet. And every time I try to discuss the future about trying so we can make plans, I just get completely shut down, and he gets cross saying he's not talking about babies again. So I find myself asking about it more because I'm not given an answer and unsure when, if it's ever going to happen. It's very difficult as I don't want to be annoying, but I need to know as I'm ready. And if he's not, maybe we shouldn't be together. It's a deal breaker. Children and no children. I'm going to be honest with you. it doesn't mean that he doesn't want kids. However, he cannot expect you to move in with him and spend your life with him if he's not going to discuss a massively important facet of your relationship. I know that people are like, but I love that person, they're the person for me, therefore I should definitely spend my life with them and forfeit my desires. No, never. Because what happens is you'll build resentment, and there'll be a point where you'll be like, I don't want to be with this person, or I've gone too far down the road and now I resent this person. It's far better to be doing what you're doing now. It's not wrong to be asking him about his life plan. You do need that answer. I would sit down with him and I would say, we're buying a house together, we're committing, you're not talking to me about the family situation. You can't say, I'm going to be cross with you because you keep talking about babies. You can't do that. It's a no deal situation. You have to bring it back to we need to talk about what we see our future as being. And he might say, I do want kids, I just don't want them yet, and you're doing my head in because I think you're going to move in and we're not going to enjoy being with each other for like 2 years and you just want to get pregnant. I get that, don't you? I mean, that might be a completely normal reaction. He might be like, mate, we're just buying a house together. We're going to have like a great start to life together and you want to have a baby right now? That's perfectly all right, isn't it? Because if you can say that, you'll be like, okay, I get that. When are we thinking about it being likely? Are we looking at 2 years? Or are you thinking about 35? Get some kind of understanding, because on a fertility level, you've got time, haven't you? You really have. But I think it's really okay to be at a point where a couple of years down the line, you're thinking, okay, this is what we want. Or definitely a cut off by, say, 35 or whatever. I just think what's probably happening is you two have got together, you're buying a house together, it's super exciting. He's probably thinking about all the ace times that you're going to have together. And the idea of having a baby right now is just a bit left field for him. He's like, can we just enjoy each other? I'm thinking about passionate nights of sex. I'm thinking about lions on the weekend. I want to go on holiday and do things like a weekend break in Rome. It's completely all right to feel that way, isn't it? And don't you want a bit of that as well? So I think you need to bring it back to I need to talk to you about the future. I'm not talking about it as in imminent. I just want us to have that conversation so that I relax into our relationship and enjoy those long lie-ins and those drunken Saturday nights and those fun weekends away, knowing that you love me and that we have an agreement that we both want children. Because if you were then to say, I don't want kids, that's going to be super painful for you. And it's also going to give you a real understanding about the shape of what the future will look like if you choose that path. And then you have a choice that you can make ultimately. But the likelihood is he's just like, slow down. I want to enjoy you. He's buying a house with you. That's super committed. And your fear is just getting in the way of you enjoying that. So him getting cross is a defense mechanism, probably because he doesn't want to get into that awkward territory where he's like, I don't want to have them for like 4 years. And he thinks you're going to be really upset. Whereas what you want is to go, this clarifies our position. We're on the same page. There are going to be babies. It's just not yet. And also, as you live together, as long as you know that he definitely wants children and you grow into that situation together and enjoy it, you'll probably find that it eases into that family situation just because it becomes more natural because you're in that environment and you'll start thinking about those things and planning those things. And men do get super broody. They don't believe they will, but they do. But try to relax with it and enjoy moving in. I keep having dreams about my teeth falling out. Do you have any idea what this is? Oh, well, there are lots of theories. Okay, so I'll go for the very natural theory, the one that's mostly talked about, which is stress. So when you are stressed, when you go to bed, you bite your teeth, you grate them. And often this causes a reaction where your brain, understandably has a connection of feeling, and it almost feels like everything's just kind of heightened, and then you feel like your teeth are falling out of your mouth. This is a very normal dream. It's a fear dream, it's a stress dream, and it often is responding to a period of stress in your life and anxiety in your life. It might be that you've got problems at work, problems at home, but it's very much that sense of biting down on your teeth and the stress causing that feeling of them falling out. There is another belief system that actually it signifies fear of aging, that you potentially are in a situation where beauty is something that's important to you, and the connection of losing teeth is very much in line with, I suppose, the archetypal what standard of beauty we expect, which is these days everyone's going to have like veneers and perfectly straight teeth. I'm the only one in my family without straight teeth. Just got really big teeth at the front, I've got really crooked teeth at the bottom because I just can't be bothered with braces. But the point is that beauty and things like that are very connected with teeth. So that's another one. However, my favourite is looking at Jung. So Carl Jung had a very clear belief that you play everybody in your dream, everything in your dream. So you are your mouth, and you are your teeth, and you are your teeth falling out. And I like that because it usually is quite symbolic for people to work through. So arguably, you would be the teeth that you were losing from your mouth. So on a suppose spiritual existential level, it may be that you feel that there is something within you that's being lost, something within you that's escaped, maybe visions and dreams that you wanted to fulfill feel out of reach, and so it's a constant sense of losing and not quite achieving what you require, and a fear of that. And you know, the mouth being the part of you that is consistent and is steadfast, but always feeling like you're letting parts of yourself go. Maybe you're pleasing too many people and you're giving yourself away, and that giving yourself away is leaving you feeling empty. I think that that symbolism is something that's really helpful, but all of those have average weight. You can use any of those that you like, but I think Jung is great. And whenever you're in a dream, it kind of helps you to see every character and helps you to imagine what part of that you are and what it represents. And then everything is full of lessons, isn't it? For me, that's how it works. Do you like how my dogs are all screaming hysterically in the background, as if like somebody has walked in with a weapon and is threatening it? I mean, literally, do you know what this will be? It'll be like there'll be a wood pigeon in the garden, and it's like, well, they're screaming at each other. Can you hear it? It's like, I even know which one's doing that. I even know that. That's Wookie and Dobby. Now one's howling. Probably like a wood pigeon. That's the level of drama. Can you imagine if we were all chihuahuas, what it would be like? Unbelievable. I've got a Labradoodle, she just lies on the floor and never says anything. But the bloody chihuahuas, you think they were being pillaged? Unbelievable. If it isn't bad enough that we're going to augment humans with AI, create some Terminator robot, I've got bloody 3 hysterical dogs in the kitchen and 2 squirrels not in the kitchen and 2 cats and a really big dog. I think I have issues from childhood of not being allowed pets. Remind me to tell you about the time that I rescued 7 kittens and then rehoused all but 2 of them and then kept 2 of them in my parents' spare garage at the time. I say spare garage, it had an old car in, and my father was hysterical when he found them 3 months later. I'd done a very good job with my sister, but I learned not to lie at 11 years old. It was not something that ended well. I did get to keep the cats though, so it did end well on one level. Anyway, that's enough of a story about me and my rescuing of animals, but I do believe it's down to the fact that they didn't let me have a dog when I was a kid. Blame the parents, shift accountability and responsibility. Right, I'll see you next week. I might be totally AI'd up. Might have put myself on a programme. Elon Musk Neuralink in my head, speaking French, just because this is what we'll be able to do. Taking out my neighbours if they're annoying me with the bins. Just watch it, Chris. Watch it, or I'll shoot you with my finger. Or I'll just look at your eyes and beam you. Be like a bloody X-Man. Excellent. I'm the perfect candidate. Boris and Matt would be like, of course she is, she's great. She wouldn't cause us any trouble, would she? Wouldn't cause us any trouble at all. Finally, bit of a nice news today. I got upgraded on the train. Isn't that nice? I got upgraded because the person came over and said to me that they appreciated what I was fighting for. That's nice, isn't it? It's nice when you get things like that happen. It's never happened on a plane yet. Even when I try to look posh and look like I might be qualified in something important. Don't know whether anybody else tries that. It's never worked. Never worked. See you soon. Bye.